Hey, my name is Petra Cruz, and I'm obsessed with all things birth, but especially VBAC. I am a birth doula and mom who had a vaginal birth after 3 cesareans. In this podcast, we dive deep into the inspirational world of vaginal birth after cesarean. In each episode, you'll hear inspiring VBAC stories, practical tips from professionals who've championed the VBAC cause, as well as my personal journey and how it might help you on yours. From mindset shifts to evidence-based practices, you'll leave each episode feeling inspired and informed. Get ready to soak in the wisdom, embrace the strength within, and join this incredible VBAC community. This is the VBAC Junkie Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so honored to chat with Meaghan today. And Meaghan is a midwife. And if you're unfamiliar with what a midwife even is, we're going to chat about that. So, Meaghan, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's so nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, you are just like such a wealth of knowledge. I feel like midwifery knowledge should just be like common knowledge for everybody because it's so important. So, what brought you into midwifery and what is a midwife?
Oh, yeah, it's really in my blood and in my bones. When I was a young girl, a teenager, I wanted to heal my matrilineal line, and I said that out loud to somebody, and I kept following the threads. But I did have a great great grandmother who I knew was a healer. She was a curandera in Mexico, and then they moved to Texas. And we have stories of her healing my grandpa of headaches with eggs and limpias and using the herbs, and we had trauma and we lost all the recipes. So first I became an herbalist and was trying to recover these old kitchen recipes and healing systems. And I have kids, and I feel like that really lights a spark for a lot of mothers in their journey of trying to support their family and their loved ones and knowing who they are and how to help. So I was an herbalist and I really wanted to go deeper. And most of the people coming to me were moms and babies. And I went into midwifery school. Actually, I was in Ayurveda school. I became an Ayurvedic practitioner and learned seasons and elements and how to build routine in your life, what foods to use seasonally and for optimal digestion, how to process emotions and spiritual stuff that's coming up. And that's woven into my midwifery, and we'll talk more about that. And then I got the call for midwifery. I couldn't put it down. And I found out in midwifery school that my grandmother's, we had a neighbor come to my grandmother who's living, and she said, I knew that they birthed my grandma at home. But that they were a midwifery team, a mother-daughter midwifery team in Texas for their neighborhood. So it was just at the perfect moment, and I know that they're here with me. And I think traditional midwives really are who we're standing upon as licensed midwives in this country, and where most of the people go to traditional hospitals. These women that have known in their bones forever. This is one of the most ancient jobs. And so what a midwife does is we take women from preconception, so helping them understand their cycles and their bodies and how to eat during their cycles, and how to deal with the stress and to the emotions around becoming a mother. There's so much. So walking with them and letting them know that they're not alone, and having midwifery visits, which are hour-long visits where we're talking about what's coming up in their life, what are they afraid of, how is their digestion, what are they sleeping like, weaving in certain plants, certain herbs, certain routines, and that goes into conception when they're pregnant. So we're meeting often. I'm on call for them. They can text me, they can call me. It's not like you have to go through 3 people to get access to me. And that, I think, is a big difference midwives make. And then when the birth happens, we can do a home birth or a birth center birth. Some midwives go in and work in the hospitals. Those are nurse midwives. And then after the birth, we tuck them in, we leave, they get to sleep at home after we make sure everyone's good. And then in the postpartum, I really focus a ton on going in, giving the mom massage, doing treatments on her to help her feel relaxed and safe, and giving her touch. This is what we really crave, just to kind of anchor us in this extreme experience where we're blasted open. And then at the end, 6 weeks, we do a closing of the bones, which is a traditional midwifery serrado. So we are using rebozos, and just like we do with the babies, we do with the mothers. So we swaddle babies for their nervous systems to help them feel secure and safe and protected. And we do that for the mother as well. So it's a little bit, but back into the difference between midwives and doulas, which we were talking about a little bit before this started. Midwives are in charge of the medical. We are looking at lab, we're drawing blood, we're doing PAPs, we are taking vitals, we're noticing what a mom's normal is so that when things veer out of normal, we can address it. We are using our hands. In each visit, we're palpating the belly, we're feeling where digestion may be stuck, feeling how the muscles are, where the bones are, how they're expanding, how baby's growing, what the fluid's like, addressing position. So if baby's in a non-optimal position, we're feeling that with our hands, and educating the mother so that she's feeling with her hands, oh, my baby's head's going lower and lower. And now I can't really feel all of the head, and it's very engaged. This isn't about us. This is about empowering and educating the mother, because she knows her body better than anybody else. And we work not in a top down, like I know more than she does. No, this is about her understanding risks, complications, having true informed consent. So knowing the tests that are coming up, why we do them, if she risks out or opts out of them, why is she choosing that? And as long as she knows the repercussions, I'm totally okay with most of those decisions. So we have conversations.
Yeah, and that is so beautiful, just the way you explained it. And I do want to preface, though, for the audience, not every midwife practices like this. So definitely ask questions before you hire this midwife. You can interview multiple midwives before you decide on one, to make sure that the way they practice aligns with your beliefs and your values, because you're going to have this person in a very intimate space with you. So making sure that you feel comfortable with them, even just, in that interview beforehand, because that can translate into your birth if you don't feel comfortable with them. Also, I want to ask you what exactly, and we already talked about this a little bit before, but what exactly is your role? Because as I told you before, like I had the mother I was supporting at a home birth, her mom was not happy with the midwife because she thought the midwife was supposed to be doing what I was doing. So, just giving like some clarification on what your role in that actual birth space is.
Oh gosh, this question. Yes, this is, let this spread far and wide. And the main things, midwives come during active labor, so 6 centimeters or more. But it's birth is so nonlinear. We had a mom at 9 centimeters for 6 hours. So if you go at 3 centimeters, or the beginning when contractions are coming regularly, and you could be in early labor and still have that 5-1-1, right? 5 minutes apart, for 1 minute, for an hour, and it's still early labor. We come when it's about time to start pushing. Pretty much would be ideal, or a little bit beforehand. And this can cause some struggle, because if we go and check the mom and she's 3 centimeters and say, cool, you're doing great, the baby sounds good. So what we do is we come in, we're checking the baby's heart tones. So we're seeing, yep, baby's handling contractions really well. The bleeding is normal. Keep doing this, encouraging her. And then we may go and let the doula take over the emotional, the rebozo work that you're doing, the hand double hip squeezes. Doulas are so amazing. They come in with their bag of tools and tricks and smells and fans and all the things to just help you keep your gate, the pain threshold underneath this level, so that you can keep going and your body will produce all those good hormones to meet that intensity. Midwives come, we're logging all of the information, we're keeping the medical aspect down, and we want to stay sharp. So if we're at a birth for 24 hours, we get exhausted and we need to be ready to handle an emergency if there is an emergency and make quick decisions. And that is why we love to try to be there during active labor through the postpartum, immediate postpartum. But it doesn't always happen that way, and that's totally fine. But we always want to make sure people have an understanding of what normal is, and normal is completely unique for each family, each mother, each grandparent coming in. Absolutely. And that's a hard dynamic too, of when the grandparents come in and they're watching their loved one going through very hard stuff. So that's a whole other element that we love to talk about. And if the mom's going to be comfortable fully being unhinged and primal and sexual, right? Like naked and how will they feel? And I come from a lineage, so my teachers, they like more like Michel Audant. He is very much like, you don't really watch a laboring woman labor or it's not going to really go. So the more that she can feel safe and secure and like people aren't watching her. So that means when we enter, we're not really engaging in a ton of conversation. We're not just sitting there staring at her. And so that's part of why we enter a little later too, is because sometimes there's a performance piece that comes, and then there's the doubts of like, I'm sorry to take this long for you. And, that these terrible self-inflictions of what is happening. So that's not it at all, because this is what our work is. We're here to be with the woman during this period. And sometimes it is 24 or 48. I had a 4-day birth recently, and it was insane. And but I was able to sleep. The dad and we recovered, but that sometimes looks very different for a mom that gives birth in 12 hours or 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's great that you point that out because a midwife needs her faculties, all of them, like you said, just in case an emergency does arise, so that she can think quickly, okay, what is the best thing that we can do right now? Because you're going to be focused on laboring, and then hopefully your support people are just going to be focused on supporting you. So making sure that that is clear to everybody who's going to be in the birth space. You might see your midwife sleeping, napping. That's great. You know that they're going to be rested for the time when they need to be at their best for you. So, yeah, thank you for clarifying that so much because there's so much confusion around doulas and midwives. And knowing that your doula, just a little more clarification on a doula. We don't perform cervical checks. We're not going to listen to heart tones. We're not going to take your blood pressure or any of that. That would be the job of your midwife. So, not expecting us to be your medical provider. We're literally there for your emotional and physical support throughout your entirety of your labor or when you're just ready for us to join you. So anyways, now that we've got that all settled.
Yeah. And real quick, when you go for women that are having hospital births, there's a lot of people there at the hospital, right? There's
Oh, yeah.
many nurses, there's the people that are doing certain types of blood stuff, there's a doctor, and then they may shift, right? So they have 12-hour shifts. For us, it's just your team, your doula and your midwife and the assistant midwife for the most part. Some midwives go solo, but that we have really the job of many people in the hospital. So I do just love to share that aspect also.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, when you're preparing your clients or, just in general, because, we're talking mostly about VBAC here on this podcast. So, is there anything that you do differently with your VBAC moms to prepare mentally, physically, spiritually, or any of that for labor, birth, and the postpartum?
Oh man, VBAC moms are, oh, it is the best. It is so wonderful to work with VBAC moms. And I must say that in the work in the field that I'm in, I get moms that are extremely courageous and they want something different and they are fighters and they are resilient and they are so strong and open-hearted and want to learn and be educated because they've got this, it's really the wounded healer archetype emerging. And so something happened that was traumatic or that wasn't what they wanted or didn't go as, and they really want to shift that story for themselves. So they are weaving and making medicine as it's happening. From the beginning, VBAC moms are all in and they just do everything that you're suggesting in my experience. That yeah, there is fear, right? There is these big numbers that you're up against of placental abruption and what if I have to go through labor and then go in, so I'm doing both and starting out exhausted and the safety of your baby and going up against everybody who wants to keep you safe and in this box of, yeah, why don't you just go in and get that, at the hospital, what are you doing? But really, midwives and home birth and birth center births are the best option for moms that are trying for a VBAC, in my opinion. And the numbers reveal that, because we are listening and working prenatally to address the fears. I can't tell you how many women have come to me, and I'm working with one mom who's my next mama to give birth, most likely. And she has this storyline that's passed down from her mothers and her grandmothers that they don't have good birthing hips. And these are women that had belly births. So, that is shifted. And these VBAC mamas are wanting to shift that story for their next generation of children. So how we work differently is we dive in the visits, and our visits are hour plus, and the intake is the 2-hour visit. So from that beginning visit, we're going through the experience and we are unpacking, and we can even look through medical records and say, okay, let's see here. And often what the medical records are very different than the taking and the understandings that the parents have. And, we can actually look at, okay, the heart tones dipped to this, but then they came back, or the waters were broken. They get, so addressing the complications and the interventions. I am so grateful to hospitals and doctors. I don't demonize epidural because I've seen it work wonders for my moms that are exhausted. So I am so grateful. And I know that there is a total place and need, and that it has saved many women's lives. We just have a very high cesarean section rate. And often it's about getting them out of a system that's expecting a type of performance with dilation. And for a lot of women that come to midwifery too, there's a fear of the hospital. So, getting your blood pressure taken and it's higher than normal is the white lab coat syndrome. And so why are we afraid? And that is kind of what we address in the visits. Everybody that is terrified of going to the hospital or has a past traumatic story, we unpack, and I have them go into the hospital and really try to navigate, what does this look like? How will I protect myself differently? And having a doula is above and beyond. Every woman should have a doula, in my opinion, at a home birth or at a hospital birth. It makes the world of difference. So having people that will fight for you and say, hey, we don't want to break the bag of waters at 1 centimeter. Can we wait, a day if you're at the hospital? Interventions with antibiotics, and, that really asking them for a different option. What are the risks? What are the benefits? What happens if I say no? You can always say no, and you can always fire your care providers too. Nurses that are giving you a hard time. So protecting that space. So we actually walk through, what does it look like if we're at the hospital? Because those are the biggest fears. What would happen if it is a belly birth again? What does that feel like? And often, it's not as bad, because at the end, it's the healthy baby, it's the healthy mom, and we can make meaning and medicine. And we know that we're doing the best we can, right? And so integrating the experience in the postpartum is a big piece. But having a VBAC mom and taking her through the visits, making sure that she's hearing all kinds of stories, empowering stories, connecting with other moms that have been VBAC mothers is very important too. So helping to weave these women together to share support and to navigate those emotional fields. And then in the postpartum, well, actually after the birth, and watching this just amazement at having done this when you overcame so much, right? So you're going up this mountain and you're overcoming boulders and you're moving around them and you finally hit this top and there's no better high, right? And then you're coming down. And so in the postpartum, we're integrating and honoring. And I find, and I'm sure you found too with mothers, just telling them that they're so strong. And we have the best jobs because we watch women be strong and powerful and vulnerable and come apart and then find the strength and then come back when it is the hardest thing you've probably ever done before, and then have the victory and redemption.
Oh my gosh. I just got like chills when you said that because it is so true. And right, I feel so honored to be able to witness these women who, at one point, they might even feel like they can't do it. They can't go another second, they can't go another contraction. And then they just find this immense strength from inside of them and they do it. They push a little further and then they do it. And then at the end, it's just to see the look on their face, is just everything. It's everything. It makes me cry like every time. I've like tried not to cry because I'm like, this is not about me, but like it's hard not to cry, when you see this mother come from a place where she feels like she cannot, and then she does it, and there's just like, oh, nothing else like it. Yeah. So you've touched on so many things, and I love how you do not just, prepare the mother for like her body, because that's so much of what we hear about is preparing the body for VBAC, which is important.
Yeah.
But the mental part of it is so intense and so deep. And like you said, it can come from your lineage, like it can come from your mom, your grandmother, and then these things are instilled in you, told to you where you believe that they're true, even though they might not be. And so that can actually change the trajectory of how we birth, how we live, just based on what we've been fed our whole lives. So then unraveling all that to prepare for this birth that you feel like everybody said you can't do is so deep. And I love how you just do like the spiritual part, the mental part, every part of it. I've never even heard of a midwife who does all of these things. So I am just, thank you so much for what you do because that is so needed. It is so needed. We want love. We want support. We want to feel like we can when so many people tell us we cannot. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And, you know, collaborative body work, right,
Mhm.
is paramount. So this body work piece of preparing that woman is a big part of it. So getting regular chiropractic, getting cranio, I think therapy is incredible to have because, but also a practice of journaling and noticing, okay, what triggered me? Well, who said something today that made me spiral into my self doubt? And if we view that as a test for us up leveling our experience as a mother and seeing it as a rite of passage, that how do I grow from this? What is it in me that is triggered? And how can I heal that so I can step into more power? And so instead of being like, oh my gosh, dejection, you're right, I can't do this. Or I heard this story where this mom was going for a VBAC and had to get rushed into the hospital, these terrible stories. And it's like, okay, bring that to your midwife or your care provider and say, hey, I heard this story. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the cord wrapped around the neck and the ultrasound, and oh my goodness, and now the MFM, the maternal fetal medicine doctor, wants to see me every week. And it's like, yeah, that's a variation of normal. And, 1 in 3 babies will be born with the cord around the neck. And that's okay. So as long as we understand why we're feeling anxious about something, then we can, yeah, I say just journal it out, bring it, and your care provider can tell you the actual risks and benefits. What would happen? How do we handle that at home birth? So most of the time is going through with people and saying, yeah, like there is normal decelerations that happen in birth, and that usually happens during pushing. So the difference of when the heart rate should be dipping and then how it comes back up, and we want to see good variability. Yeah, but back to your questions and these beautiful things about creating sacred boundaries. So really filtering out people that are bringing a negative space. And sometimes that is the mother, the grandmother, right? And so having those hard conversations of, hey, and for home birth, we really talk about this because um, sometimes they want the grandmas there. And then we say, okay, well, how would your mom handle it if you had a hemorrhage or if we had to, transfer? And we have the grandma come in and say, so here's some of the things that could happen. We're trained medical providers. This is what we bring. We bring oxygen, we bring our anti-hemorrhage drugs, we bring all of this. And so finding clear systems to support. And some of my favorite births are where the grandma caught the baby. So of course I'm like, let's talk about it. But we did a lot of work of, having her understand her role. And people at the birth, they want to have roles. So navigating that, the partner, what is his role? How does he show up, or she? And the grandmother, sometimes the grandfather. And it's just extremely a beautiful situation.
Yeah, and I love that. It's so important to have those really hard conversations before the labor is even in sight, because all of that is going to just come up in labor, even if it takes, like, say you really want your mom to be at your birth, at the birth of your baby. Tell her to come with you to an appointment with your midwife so she can get all the questions out ahead of time. That way, she also feels confident and understands the role of a midwife before that ever happens. And I understand it's so hard while you're pregnant to have these conversations. But I remember, like, when I was planning my VBAC, it was really hard, but having those conversations helped me so much in the end, because I was able to make sure that I was supported in a way that felt good to me. I was able to make sure that, everybody understood what my goal for this birth was, what exactly I wanted to feel. And it wasn't always about having a baby vaginally, which of course I wanted that so bad, but it was about feeling heard. It was about making sure that I had a voice and a choice in what was going to happen. That just helps so much, especially if you're like a control freak, which I feel like I kind of am. And you want to be able to control some aspect of something that is very unknown. Birth is so unknown and we can never actually predict exactly how it's going to unfold. So finding something that you feel like you can also have control over along the way, so that you can know that this is your birth. So it's your choice what happens. As long as you feel confident and comfortable with what's happening, that's exactly what should happen.
100%. Yeah. And
Yeah.
not leaking the energy, right? So having those good boundaries, you're not wondering the what ifs. And in labor, you're not thinking about the emotional needs of anybody else besides yourself and your baby. So we really want you to go inward to understand what the situation needs, and anything else that's taking your energy outwards. And it could be your partner stuff. So having good partner relations, if there's any resentment or if there's any kind of separation of the experience, then we really try to draw you back together to stoke that oxytocin, to really connect so that your heart's open and therefore you can bring your baby in with great power.
Exactly. Yeah, because if you're having marital issues at all, or just like your partner doesn't agree with VBAC, making sure that you talk about that ahead of time, because everything, like, I feel like we're so cracked wide open in birth, and just everything will come out. Everything that you didn't even know you were holding on to. So,
Yeah.
yeah, having those hard conversations ahead of time so that your birth space can be filled with love and support, and you don't have to worry about what people are going to think of because you're naked, or what, whatever you and your partner just argued about. Like, so you can just focus on bringing your baby earthside.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so a couple of things with other boundary elements.
Hmm.
Um, I really think there's a sisterhood thing that can happen too. And so whether it's your own sisters or whether it's your friends, I really want to transform how we show up for each other in this space where there's a lot of emotions and there's a lot of self-doubt. And so whether it's saying, hey, I'm really protecting my birth space and I only want to hear stories that will support my experience. So if you have negative stories, just hold them to the side. I'm very sensitive, or some women like the visual stories, the birth stories on Instagram, and just knowing that that's one small piece of the whole experience. So having a couple of understandings that this is a kind of an imaginary experience. They're so great and incredible to witness real people giving birth, but it's very edited. So
Hmm.
knowing real life versus an edited version of real life. Um, and then with the sisterhood wound, in the postpartum, how can you really show up for your friends? So, when you're having these clear experiences of we really don't need that much. But in postpartum, not going into the postpartum house and draining the mother with conversation. How do we show up? We enter quietly. We give her a foot rub. We maybe clean the dishes. We bring some warm food and some tea to her. We prep her snacks. We refill the diapers. Maybe we take out the diaper bin in the trash. And then we quietly leave. So, knowing that we can really support people by just being compassionate listeners, not bringing our stories, our birth traumas into the space, but just being a clear vessel that can hold the experience and offer a little bit of support and compassion. So making it not about us, but just being at the feet of the mother. This is how we really change postpartum culture. And I ask everybody to join in that experience. And it really doesn't take a lot. It's a small meal or small food drop and just a quick check-in. Could even be dropping it at the door, but I do think that, and I do know that 30 seconds of non-sexual touch on somebody can help their nervous system go into the parasympathetic nervous system. So having them feel connected. I think part of the reason that our postpartum depression and anxiety rates are so terrible is because we're isolated in our boxes, away from our grandmothers most of the time and away from our families and neighbors and community. And so how can we support and foster connection for the mother so that she doesn't feel alone and isolated? How can we help provide food? So these are basic needs, human needs, feeding the belly, feeding the body, feeding the spirit and the soul and the emotions. And so allowing her to share her story when it's appropriate. Some women want to tell it right away. And some women want to wait until they can integrate some of it, or it feels too soon. And one of the ways that a friend can do this and realize that it takes a lot of energy to share a birth story. There's a lot of emotions. And in that immediate postpartum experience, it's, the first 6 weeks, right? The first 40 days is that sacred window, or the sitting in period if it's traditional Chinese medicine lineage. So how can we build and nourish and not deplete and take from the mother? And that is the biggest work. So we would love all women to share and take this onto themselves and learn how to support women.
Yeah, exactly. Because historically, women would all come together when the mother gave birth and do exactly that, nourish her mind, body, and soul, not deplete her of everything and
Yeah.
make her feel like she's got to host you, when you come to her house. Because I know I always talk about like the postpartum. We do a postpartum planning session when I have my birth doula clients. And we talk about all that, about how are you going to nourish yourself afterwards? How do you want others to help nourish you, with meals and whatever. And most women are like, oh, I don't want to ask somebody to do that for me.
Yes.
And it's like I get it because there's so much of that like super mom persona waved around everywhere. So we feel like, oh, well, look at her. She can on Instagram, she could do it all. She cooks all her meals from scratch. She takes care of all her kids and, whatever. And so we feel like from seeing that, like that's exactly how we should be too. And we cannot ask for help because then it would seem like we can't do it. And I'm speaking solely from like my experiences, because I know not everybody feels that way, but so much of the time in my clients, that's their concern. And I try to tell them, no, this is your time. You will be healing from birth. You have gone through such an intense transformation, and your mind is healing, your body is healing, you're caring for this baby. You deserve to be cared for in a way that feels good to you. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And you really hit on a big piece of it. There's a lot of shame and embarrassment to be vulnerable and to ask for help. And so, what if that was just normal? What if when women gave birth that their community came and supported them and there was no shame, right? So I'm keeping that vision as a possibility of what this, I call it a postpartum revolution for our country, that we can dispel. Even paying somebody to come to your house, like women feel like that's a luxury and an extravagance. And who am I to? And you're a mother. And often there's other kids, involved and that they're also providing full-time care for. So
Yeah.
yeah, we want to make sure that we address the guilt and the shame. And so what is that? The core belief system is feeling unworthy. And so to remind them that they are worthy to receive, and it's really something that every woman should have. And single mamas, there's some also, and VBAC mamas, right? So VBAC mamas, there's a lot, and there's a high, and sometimes there's a crash, like, whoa, now what? Because my whole life evolved around this. And so creating that meaning and that worthiness and integrating that experience.
Yes, absolutely. And, for anybody that doesn't know, you can hire a postpartum doula to
Yeah.
help around the house or to help you, with meal prep or baby or whatever it is. I mean, everyone's scope's a little different. So, but definitely you can look into that. And if you cannot hire a doula or don't feel comfortable with a doula coming into your home, if you have neighbors or family members you can talk to in pregnancy, before you're in the postpartum thick of it, ask them, hey, can you help me with this during this? And, like set up even like a meal train. They even have meal trains online. If you don't want to ask somebody, set one up online, be like, here's my link to my meal train. If you can donate, great. Thank you so much. There's so many different options now. And also, I feel like I talk about this all the time, but there's something called Be Her Village. And
Yes.
yeah,
So good.
so you can actually create an account and then you can share this link to get help paying for your support services. It could be chiropractic, it could be prenatal massage, it can be birth support, postpartum support, like any type of support you need in your pregnancy or postpartum. You got it. So look up behervillage.com. They're amazing. I actually had Caitlin, who is the founder of Be Her Village, on an episode chatting about her VBAC story. So if you're
Oh,
interested, check it out. It is so awesome.
amazing. Yeah, so
Yeah.
happy that people are shifting instead of gift registries, service registries. And,
Yes.
postpartum work is a passion for me. And we actually started to do trainings last year for postpartum doulas. And so we have one coming up if you feel really called. I don't know when this is dropping, but April 19th to the 21st. And then we're leading another one in the fall. But really, it's a beautiful time where we actually reset. And so there's a big piece on nutrition.
Mm.
Um, and Han, the author of the first 40 days, she's a friend of mine. And so she comes, and last time she taught congee making, and, that that her book, also gifting that to a friend, a stay-at-home mom, and asking her to help prepare you meals in the postpartum from this cookbook. And coming to an agreement can be huge for this mom also, to feel of service, to have meaningful work, to make food for her family and your own, and to be paid for it, when sometimes it's hard to make extra income when you're a stay-at-home mom or a mom. So don't think of it as I'm too embarrassed to ask for help. Think of it as I am giving this person an opportunity to feel really good about being in service, and to build skills, and to overcome discomforts of making food and bringing it. And so we definitely, and in the training, we cook together, and we discuss and we learn how to do some of these ancestral traditional practices. It's very midwifery led. So me and my midwifery partner, Alex, we teach midwifery understandings of the woman in postpartum. So what is normal blood loss, what to look for if you are in the space, and mental health pieces. You are gaining access to somebody, and you're witnessing from an outside perspective, possibly able to intervene before something gets too complicated. So encouraging with breastfeeding support, but we do Abhyanga warm oil massage and learning how to work with women. And that is so great for the nervous system. Mothers in India and babies in India, they get warm oil massage 3 times a day. And so that is something that you can apply warm oil right into the tissues. And so we say, we have fried nerves, right? And that's the myelin sheath that gets dry and brittle and it's fried. So how do we combat that? We add all those good fats into the foods. So adding spoonfuls of ghee or coconut oil or any kind of fat, if you're into, if you eat meats or not, adding extra fat, olive oil topping on your stews. And then we're also applying the oil to the skin. So the skin is our largest organ. And, this is a way for medicine to get in. So rubbing the oil on the outside goes into the tissues and combats dryness that can happen in the postpartum period as the hormones are adjusting. So these are some of the techniques, and we do belly binding, the Mexican style and the Bangkok style, how to do sitz baths, how to do yoni steams, how to do Mayan abdominal massage, how to take care of belly birth scars, and how to do body physiology and just how to move. Some breastfeeding lactation massage. Women can be doing lactation massage, and now there's all these devices and things, but how can a woman become familiar with the anatomy that's changing, and maybe for the first time? So knowing that, there's milk dugs in the armpits. How can I move the milk down? How can I connect and know a clogged area before it's clogged? And so not going in with fear, but going in with curiosity and being curious about the changing anatomy scape. And then at the end, I'm sure I'm missing some, we talk about so much, but we bring in birth stories. We bring in 2 moms who share their birth story among these women that want to be postpartum doulas and are hungry for the stories. And it's beautiful for these mothers too, to share amongst women. And then we eat together, and then they receive a treatment. So it's often Abhyanga one day, and then an herbal bath. And then it's the second day we do the closing of the bones, which is a traditional Mexican midwifery that we were talking about, like the swaddle. So it's a very powerful experience for the mother coming into the space, and for the women that are learning to just listen and not be interrupting with the need to try to fix or soothe or correct the experience of this woman who's coming into her power. And so that is the biggest piece of it. So if you feel called to be a postpartum doula, we need you. If you feel called to be a doula, we need you. If you feel called to be a midwife, we need you. This is the best work. It's very hard on so many levels, but it is a forge, and you will be forged into pure diamonds, because you will constantly have spots of growth. and you will constantly be learning. And each woman will bring different lessons and experiences and understandings, and each family will have a unique birth and postpartum. So it's constantly, how can I show up? How can I show up better? How can I improve how I'm communicating, and how to support, actually support, and treat each woman as an individual mother, and not just like, oh, yep, here you are. This is your 2-week visit. Let's weigh the baby. Okay, you're good, on your way. Instead, diving into, what do your tissues feel like? What is your emotional being like? How is your baby? Are you listening? And building that experience of the prenatal period of understanding and doing all that work, and knowing, like, the VBAC mamas is a perfect example. You give birth, you are at this experience, you're forever changed. And so it doesn't just end there, or in the next pregnancies. You have these children now that you can apply those learnings into their lives, and into your partner's life, and into your life in your medical care. So, that you're not going to just take any, even at the dentist. I remember being at the dentist the first time, after I really learned what true informed consent was. And they're like, oh, you need this many cavities, and we're going to do this and that. And I'm like, okay, can you explain to me what are the risks? What are the benefits? And I got a second opinion, and they were like, oh yeah, you got one cavity. And so, I could have just taken that experience, but I knew in my body, and I was so mad when I left the office. I felt taken advantage of. I felt like when I challenged with a question of asking for some benefits, they got so mad at me. And so I knew I was unsafe, and I had an ability to change care. So, this forever changes your life, experiences like this. Could you relate also?
Oh, absolutely. I was just going to say, because after I had my VBAC, and I had gone against all the odds and all the naysayers,
Uh-huh.
I felt so empowered, not only for myself, but for my children. I felt like, even the way you're saying about the dentist, when I took my son to his first appointment after giving birth, they were telling me like, oh, I don't know, his weight is not looking great. He should have gained such and such by this time. And I was like, but he's fine. Like, and I was saying, okay, what are you concerned about? And they were like, well, just his weight. And I was like, okay, but is there like an actual concern like for his well-being? And they're like, well, he just should have hit this marker by this time. And I was just like, it felt to me like they were dancing around the actual, like, giving me what their actual concerns for his health were. It was just, most people, they want them to hit this marker by this time, period. There's like, that's just what they're conditioned to do now. There's not like, I felt like they didn't even know why, they were just doing what they were told and what they've done for however long they've been doing it. So yeah, asking those questions afterwards is so important, and it does help having a VBAC, because you are informed and you've done your research, and it translates into your life in general afterwards. So yes, it is so important. And I do also want to say, I will like put any links in the show notes about like that doula training, because I feel like that is such a beautiful training. I love, love, love the way it is. And yeah, so I'm sure people will want to look into that for themselves.
Yeah,
Um, that is just so
great.
beautiful, so beautiful.
And it really, I can't tell you, but it's really like, okay, this is part of my big purpose on this world, because I see the ripples and these women that feel called and showed up, and then they are impacting the community and taking this and supporting more moms. So it really came from, I couldn't physically care for the moms because so we were talking before, I really believe in sustainable midwifery. So being able to show up for the moms in care. So that's 2 clients of my own per month. And then I take an additional postpartum. But then you hear somebody will call you and they'll share their story. And it's like, how do I say no to you? I'm taking you in, and I'm going to figure it out. But now I've built they're really just angels now in my community, that I know they have the lineage now in their bones. So we do a lot on Ayurveda. We do a lot of traditional Chinese medicine understandings, herbalism, and but really, it's really not complicated. It's just about being with the woman and being able to do small things like a foot rub, like a hand rub, like a scalp massage, like holding the baby and just encouraging her. So yeah, it's not complicated. So just take those little messages and apply it wherever you're at. We're really trying to make it possible for women, no matter how much money they make, no matter how much they can afford in postpartum care, to be able to access some of these and to share that with their family or whoever can give them that. If it's their partner, if it's their older children, if it's their grandparents. And really, we can take these same techniques and principles and bring it to the elders of our community. So that's next, of how can we really tap in and bring our elders in and offer them loving, continued support.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And, this kind of brings me into like these rituals or, like establishing self-care routines. Like, obviously, we can have these outside people that help us, but how do you think women, moms, how can they establish a self-care routine that helps them kind of get to know their body or, be able to have self-belief and compassion for themselves?
Oh, I love this question so much. And I do look to the seasons often. I do think a solo practice, so whether that's going on a walk by yourself, whether that's a 15-minute meditation, whether that's a 15-minute dance, whether that's 15 minutes of painting, something that is just you so that you're filtering the noise from your experience. I work often with Uma Mother, Patty Quintero. She's a doula in LA. She has a great platform. She leads meditation retreats. And I noticed with her moms and moms we work with together that establishing a meditation practice is amazing. So if you can't do that, but the part of it that I'm going to share, and anybody can access this, is that you notice how quickly your thoughts are coming in and you're staying in the immediate experience. Okay, I got to take the kids to school. I got to do the dishes. I got to make dinner. I got to go to the grocery store. And this bigger part of ourselves, our bigger self, is the one that's craving that VBAC, that sees the possibilities of beyond the immediate needs. And so we call that person the observer or the big self. And so that's who we want to tap into in the prenatal period. So this is different for every woman to access. Some women will do intense weightlifting all pregnancy, right? And be able to sit after that. Some women are wanting to just lounge and lay. And maybe that's how they access. I love Ayurveda. And so finding your dosha, which is the elements within your body, and they recommend certain routines. So this is the time you should go to bed. This is the time you should wake up. This is the type of exercise. These are the type of foods you eat. These are the things that keep you in balance. So I always suggest that. And Deepak Chopra's book, The Perfect Health, was given to me by my yoga teacher when I was 14. And I knew, oh my gosh, this is describing me exactly. And so I've applied those techniques and principles to get into balance for myself. So knowing that for me, when I'm reaching for coffee, that's usually me going out of balance in the afternoon, right? And I'm wanting to just keep the energy going instead of listening to my body. So finding ways to be honest with yourself on what your body needs. And in pregnancy, that changes trimester to trimester. So walking may feel great, and then it might feel terrible if you're having pubic symphysis or pelvic girdle pain. So rituals that I encourage everybody to do are, I love watercolor. But if you journal, just journaling all of the pure consciousness, stream of consciousness, you don't even need to see what the words are, but just allowing those thoughts to enter. Your birth fears. What are the things that you're afraid of? What are the stories that are kind of lingering in your tissues? Addressing those. also writing out, what does the ideal birth look like for you? What does it feel like to be in that space in your ideal birth? Who are you in that? Who's in the space with you? What is the music on? Really get into, how does this feel? And is that what I want? And that can change. I do love to do watercolor mixing of colors, and then drawing one, like I do a spiral every morning, and then I write one word that I'm feeling, and then I journal on that page. So the ability of watercolor for me is I can't control it, and it kind of blends together and it's beautiful. So I'm bringing beauty in through my eyes, and I'm accessing joy, which makes me feel good. And then just a little bit more on what I do for my daily rhythms and how I access that observer, the big self, is then I go on a walk, and I walk the same path outside every day, and I see, oh, those plants are changing. And so I get this bigger aspect of feeling one with this beautiful nature and rhythms. And what does it feel like in the spring? And then as the fall and, all the seasons change, and the light and how the light hits. So slowing down the mind and tapping into a deeper rhythm, which is birth. And when the newborns come, their consciousness is slow. So eye gazing when your newborn's here and being able to give them a massage. That's a way to do sacred ritual. And then there's placenta medicine. So you could do a planting and do that with intention, or even reading. I love your placenta painting there, and you're really touching into that moment in time, and you captured it. And placenta reading is so amazing, and I really try to encourage the parents to touch this organ. So yeah, that is part of a ritual in the postpartum space, placentas and cutting the placenta. So in home birth and midwives, sometimes we have different options. You can do an obsidian knife, and that is antibacterial, and we sterilize it, but it's energetically cutting and cleaning. And then it is cord burning. So cord burning 2 beeswax candles and putting it there, and it takes a little bit of time. So the parents can say their prayers, their pledges, they're witnessing for this child, what they are promising, or it could be a song. And so that's an experience that is a ritual in postpartum. And then the closing of bones is definitely a ritual. So sharing the birth story, that's another type of experience that creates sacredness in the experience and helps the mother to feel heard, to feel witnessed, to feel seen, to feel like she's making progress in this time that feels like a vortex in the postpartum, where it's non-linear. And so having some anchoring points of like, oh yes, I remember, because maybe we lit a candle, and maybe we put this song on, or maybe that she rubbed jasmine oil into my skin. And so the smells and the way that we take in using the senses is very important for creating any type. And that can definitely be in the pregnancy too. So it's really individual, I would say. And even just making tea and sitting and working out through, what does your ideal birth look like? Who is this being? What are your prayers for your child? And how can you be the best mother? And what does that mean? What is the work that you need to do to get to that point where you are having that birth? So whether it is you're terrified of the newborn screen, you don't want to make that, you feel overwhelmed, you can't make the decisions about the pediatrician. So then it's like, let me carve out time with my partner, see where we align. Let me call a couple pediatricians. Let me look into what the newborn screen offers, or vitamin K, or erythromycin eye ointment. I mean, there's so many decisions. And so finding that sense of calm and balance in your day, whether that's the morning, the middle of the day, the evening, can be really different. I know for me, I love my mornings. So I can be so much more effective in the morning than at nighttime, when I'm just needing to kind of like rest and start to wind down my bedtime routine.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. And you've given so many amazing tips for, a sample self-care routine. So I think that is beautiful. And the word you used, anchor, it's that anchor that we can come back to because you're right, especially in the postpartum, it feels like a whirlwind or a dream or a fog, depending on your experience. So thank you so much for that. And so I would love to kind of wrap up here. I mean, this is so amazing, all the information you've given. I feel like we could chat all day. But what, if you do have any, what tips would you give a mom that is planning a VBAC to help her feel confident in making that decision or just moving forward?
Oh gosh, yeah. Um, I think really listening to this inner wise mother within you, you know your body better than anybody else, any provider, any consultant, any doulas, midwife, OB, whoever you're working with. So knowing that you can protect that part of yourself fiercely and bring your partner into it if you have a partner, and really dive into what is the most important thing for you, and making a list and kind of saying like, hey, top priority would be nice, right? And going down your levels. But I do believe that having your inner knowing be recognized and listened to and heard is the most important thing. So if you feel like your baby's not moving, you go and nobody's really listening to you, you make sure that you're heard. And that's at any point in your care.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that is so important because during my experience, everybody told me, no, 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 like this is a terrible decision. And I just felt inside of me that it was the right thing to do. I just felt that pull, that call that I am on the right path. So definitely listen to that inner voice, that inner knowing, because you're right. Nobody, especially nobody knows our body, our mind, our experiences the way that we do. So
Right.
honoring that is so important.
100%.
Yeah. So if anybody would like to work with you or just get to know you any better, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Definitely follow me on Instagram. I post things up there. All my links are in there. I have a website. You can kind of see like what it is that I do. But yeah, I mean, these postpartum trainings, we're going to be offering more kind of things like this because it was an idea that came to fruition and it's really blossomed. So we love it too because it is a retreat for us. Um, I love to teach. So this is a part of it, but Instagram for sure. And I live in Newbury Park, Ventura County. So birth keeper events, and come find me, call me. I'm happy to talk and support you, even if it is that you live in, yeah, Georgia or something, and you need a second opinion. I'm happy to get on the phone with you and support.
I love that so much. Well, thank you for offering your amazing wisdom and tips and just yourself, your whole self, I feel like is so beautiful. So thank you so much.
Thank you for this work you're doing and supporting and giving women a platform and a encouragement in their journey.
Thank you. It is definitely my heart and soul work. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the VBAC Junkie podcast. Make sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show so that you don't miss an episode. And also, I have a free gift for you. If you would like to have a guide on how to prepare for a VBAC, head to my website at www.birthingcometru.com/VBAC guide. And all of this will be in the show notes, so you can just click that link and head there and download this free guide. I hope you have an amazing week. Until next time, bye.